And here we go. We're on episode 2. Welcome, everybody that has been, tuning in for one episode. That's kind of awkward to think that we have a following. I don't know if one person's listening, 3,000 people are listening, or probably just 3 people. The 3 people in the room right now. But, Alicia, before we get into it, give me one word to describe your last week. Just your whole week, not even just running.
Frigid.
Frigid. What's one word? Let's do one word for just your running.
Flexibility.
Flexibility. I don't know what that means.
I'm super flexible.
No, I just said one word. We're going to get to that. All right, let's start the show. So what's your spring running goal?
Qualify for the Boston Marathon.
Claim the beer mile title.
Training for a triathlon.
20 minutes again under a 5K.
To run happy.
Balance running and family.
Finish Grandma's marathon.
To not die.
Fast.
Or slow.
Let's go! Fast or slow! Let's go! Fast or slow! Let's go!
There it is. All right, we're getting used to talking over the mooing at this point. All right, so let's go back to those. All right, so welcome to the show, episode 2, right?
I have my lumberjack shirt on.
Is that on purpose?
Yeah.
Oh, we are on camera, so we don't know if we're going to put these on video right away or what, but we're experimenting with camera. I know some podcasts do cameras. I know they don't. Some don't. But let's get back to your word. So I remember your running word was flexibility. What was your frigid?
Frigid.
All
2
right.
Fs.
All right, so what does that mean? Tell people that might be listening in Zimbabwe.
Yes, it was frigid here.
So like 10 degrees?
No, like negative 50 wind chills.
There we go. Right. So we set some records around. Did we actually set a record for temperature?
I don't know. Maybe Minneapolis did.
I think they were saying that if you were 25 or like 25 years old or less, this was the coldest day that you've ever encountered. But yeah, I mean, here in Wisconsin, we got up to like negative 25, negative 33 degrees, and then the wind chill on top of that for one day was negative 55. So we had our group run last night, which was awesome.
Negative 7 or 8?
Negative 7, it felt great. You know, people coming back out to run, actually, if you dress right, that actually felt good to kind of not be cooped up anymore. And tell me about your one word for your running, flexibility. Does that mean you're more flexible because you've been doing tons of yoga?
Oh, yeah. No. Flexible as being adaptable. And I talked about this actually with someone on the run last night, but part of me wants to be a control freak and get all my miles and minutes in, but I have to listen to the advice I give other people.
What is that advice? I don't get it.
To be flexible and be able to go with the flow with my training. I actually took 2 days off in a row because I just couldn't get down to the store where our treadmill is.
Yeah, I know. We have a personal treadmill in the store since the beginning, since we opened the store.
Yes, so the amount of effort it would take me to actually come down here, right. I didn't want to go out in the cold. So I just took 2 days off, and that's okay to adjust your training, and especially at this point, if you're training for a spring race, you have quite a bit of time.
Right.
So,
and we talked about this in episode 1 a little bit, but what are you kind of getting ready for? Like, what's the first good effort that you're going to put forth? Like, how many weeks, maybe?
How many weeks out am I?
Yeah, I don't even know.
Yeah, it's a week after Eau Claire Marathon, the race I'm doing.
Okay, so May, middle of May. What is
right.
it? It's February now. So you have some weeks. You're able to be flexible on that. I almost mirrored your week this week. I didn't run on the treadmill, and I didn't run, period, for 2 days as well. Took this week as kind of a down week, not really just because of the weather, but because a lot of stuff going on, and I haven't had a down week. I've been getting over an injury. And this was my first down week in a while. I've been building and building and building. So it was a nice week, though, to have kind of a down week.
And we joked, we both felt amazing yesterday running for the first time, having that time off.
Yeah, I ran an hour last night, and it was cold, and I actually, it was fine with how I dressed, but it was one of the best runs I've had in a long time, just because I had, probably 48, 50 hours of nothing at all. So anyway, being flexible with our schedules, now's a good time of the year to be flexible and take a down week if you need it. Of course, if you need it, you need to take a down week. But also what we found is it kind of snuck up on us. We had the kids a lot more with school being out. We had a lot going on with the store, and I always keep saying, like, all life stress is running stress. All this stress, no matter where it comes from, kind of runs together. So be flexible in your training out there. I know it's hard to do for the control freaks like us, but that's part of the fun, is to see what happens on
and find other ways to be active even inside. Yeah. We did a yoga video one night just together.
Yeah.
15 minutes. So
yep.
You can find other things to do.
Get the heart pumping. I got out on the cross country skis. I know the skiers are loving all the snow that we got. So that should be good enough there. But let's go ahead and get into our guest here. Dr. Matt Evans, and I know that we're going to probably learn a little bit more about what he prefers to be called, because I knew him back when I was in school as a physics student. So he's always been Dr. Evans to me, but over the years we've gotten to know each other in a couple different ways, mostly through the running store here now that we moved back. But he's been in Eau Claire all along since he's been teaching here at the university. I'm going to let him talk to you a little bit more about that. But before we do that, let's bring in the Hear the Herd segment. Hear the Herd is when we hear from people out there in the community that enjoy running, fitness, anything really. People that buy a pair of running sunglasses or buy a pair of gloves is part of our herd. Anyone that walks through our doors, that walks outside there and is part of Blue Ox Running is our herd. So let's hear from the herd. Okay, yes. So those were oxen. Many oxes make up the herd. So now we're going to hear from the herd. Dr. Matt Evans, please welcome to the show. But also please correct me with how we should actually address you now that we're more of colleagues in the running world than student teacher.
I think the way you should address me now is Dr. Moo as part of the herd. Actually,
Dr. Moo.
Yeah, Dr. Moo. The whole idea of when I'm in a classroom, I have to kind of maintain the fact that I can be very friendly, but I still have a job. And
yes.
So that's where, when you were in my electro theory class way high, you know what? I had a grade that I had to give to you. When you graduated, that was... Now you're my friend, because yes. We share a lot of common goals, and that's one of the things that really brought me to the store and to you, and just buying into this idea that we can do great things if we just pair together and make things happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you that don't know the background of how we started the store, there's a whole story there, and I'm not going to share it now. But Dr. Moo here was he was a primary person that we reached out to before we knew we were really going to land in Eau Claire and do this, before we really pulled the trigger and had the green light, because he's had his finger on the pulse of fitness and distance running in the Eau Claire area for a long time. He's partnered with Eau Claire Marathon, and we're going to get into this and how instrumental he is with his marathon class. And so some of those roots that you have, going through college or high school even, and you just never know where those are going to go. We were away from Eau Claire for 12 years, and here we are back in the back dingy part of a running store talking with Dr. Moo here. Or
you can call me Matt.
Okay, we're going to call him Matt now. That was short-lived. All right, so let's go ahead and get an idea of what you do right now for the running community, and then we're going to back all the way up and kind of get what your entrance point was to running in and of itself. So what do you do right now, professional life? How long have you been in Eau Claire? And what do you do outside of your professional life in the physics classroom in the community?
Yeah, so I've been in Eau Claire for about 19 years now, and I've been teaching physics, and that's great. And that's just part of your life, and your work can't be everything. So what I look for is that balance, and one of the things that I've always sort of gone out to is that running, that athletic community, some bonding that happens. And so I'm working with the Eau Claire Marathon. I help out with their finish line area. I get to stand on the finish line, which is one of the greatest things ever. So you get to share
without running the race. That does sound pretty good. Right.
It's you get to see the elation, the joy, the pain, all of that. I also teach a running class that it really came about from just wanting to do something different for the kids, because we stress them out so much, but we're not teaching them about life as much. This is something that I looked into, and so I created a class. And one of the best things about the class is that community members can either join the class where they go through continuing education and they actually come to our lectures, and they can actually do assignments if they want. And then I just wanted to bring in everybody. So every Saturday morning is a free run for everybody to come join the students, because that interaction and that community building helps both groups.
Yes. So give us a quick way that community members, other than coming into Blue Ox Running and getting a pamphlet, which we shell out with every pair of shoes. But right now we're about to start, and by the time we release this, you will have done a couple more runs with the community members. What is the best way that people can get information for, especially that Saturday morning run or the marathon class?
Actually, the easiest way for the Saturday morning runs is just go to the Eau Claire Marathon, and under the Prepare tab is something that says, runs, and it will bring you to a page that shows you all of our routes. But those are all on Saturday morning. We meet at 8 o'clock at Centennial Hall, and then we do a little warm-up and go do some marked course. As far as the continuing education class, if you just type in distance running UWEC, it'll come up.
Perfect. And we're going to put a link to that on the show notes of this episode, which will be blueox.run/podcast2. Lisha, how did you get to meet Dr. It's always going to be forever in my brain, Dr. Evans. So how did you get to meet Matt? Did you know him when we were going to school, or what was your first recollection?
Yeah, I think I remember you from Eau Claire.
That was not a good start.
When I was
He's not forgettable.
Dating Adam. But yeah, and then I think I was just introduced to him through you.
Yep.
And got to know him. Like, we ran together on the group run last night and chatted.
Group runs.
Yep.
Awesome. So that's a little bit of what Matt does right now in Eau Claire. But where did running start? Because part of this podcast is seeing how we're all the same but different, right? So a lot of people get different entry points into running, fitness, whatever you want to call it. But what they're doing now, 1 year later, 2 years later, 20 years later, 40 years later, is probably not going to look exactly the same. 40 plus. Oh, yeah, that's right. 40 plus years later. So what was your entry point into running?
7th grade.
Great.
In junior high, it was like, hey, there's a track team practice. I think I'll go.
Right.
And one of those memories that you have is I remember going to the basement of the skiing store in town because they had the let's go buy shoes, like real running shoes instead of your Keds or Converse. And it was a pair of Brooks with cardboard midsoles. And it was like, these were the greatest things ever.
Right.
And they were blue and yellow. There's certain memories that you have when you start something. And that's one that I carry with me because it keeps me thinking of the joy that I found when I started, and I was horrible.
Yeah,
it was
define horrible. What do you have for those first memories?
Well, 8th grade. This is when we had a track meet, indoor track meet, and there was 9 of us on my team from 8th grade doing the 800.
Right.
9. I was 8th, and I just pipped out the 9th place person.
There you go.
And it was just one of those things where I remember that too, because that always reminds me that I was still part of it. And that's where, one of my best friends was the best 800 runner out there.
Right.
And that was really fun because we were all training together, and it didn't matter whether I was winning or not. It was just, I was still there participating. And I kept that through everything that I've done, because you can't be the best forever. You can't even be your best self forever.
Right.
And that's what I learned very early on, and I think it's one of the things that I take and try to help people remember as they're running.
Good. Alicia, first memories? 7th grade, 8th grade? Are we all about the same?
I was more like 5th or 6th doing Hershey track meets.
Cool. Were you 8th out of 9th people? Or were you...
I don't remember.
What's your first recollection?
I think
of,
I was
the
kind
racing?
of like mid to front pack as a little tyke.
Little tyke.
And then I got more into it with my brothers going into the high school years.
Yeah. I just remember my friends were out for the team. I didn't do it 7th grade where you could start. I did 8th grade. My friends were out. I thought it'd be fun. I raced a lot of bicycles, which had like we lived in Colorado, so there was more of a scene there. So I'm racing bicycles in Wisconsin at like age 10, and there's like nothing. We'd have to travel so far to go to those. So I started running with my friends, and I just remember 8th grade. I was literally looking at every curb on a run, thinking, which one am I going to intentionally break my ankle on so I don't have to do this garbage anymore? It was just
my first race
awkward,
was
hurtful.
middle school 7th race. I finished really well, but I puked like all in the middle of the race.
Welcome to distance running.
Yes, I was exerting everything I had. I puked right in front of my coach's feet. I remember that.
And he's like, "Good job, you're doing it right."
Yes,
little 12-year-old. Perfect.
Actually, one of the greatest memories of one of my students will always be the bar story of, "Hey, had I ever told you about the time I puked on my professor?" She had come across the finish line at the marathon.
Oh, so it's a running. It's not a bar story.
Exactly,
you tell it in the bar.
Exactly.
Got it.
So it's like one of those. Hey, I got a line to get your attention, and then it's just, oh yeah, I puked after
right.
a race.
Because maybe some other people have bar stories where they puke on their professor, but this was actually during a running race that you tell later at the bar.
Yep.
Got it. Cool. So from 7th grade, 8th grade, talk me through. Like, did you keep competing? Did you like competing after? I don't know if you competed in college. What was that like? You started in competition,
right? And so 9th grade, I got better and ran the mile. I broke 5 minutes. Barely.
Cool.
But, 9th grade, and that was junior high, so you're king of the school.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And then in 10th grade, I was actually in England for a year, and I ran, in their state championships, the West Midlands. And, it was just a very different experience because it was much less driven towards winning, and then came back, did the high school.
What do you mean by that? You were still competing, but what do you mean by not driven towards winning in England?
Well, when you look at American sports, it's you win, and everyone has to be good. Over there, it was, hey, you're pretty good. You want to come out and hang out?
Right.
And
it's the club model,
right? And I liked that feeling. And one of the things that I sort of am proud about is that yes, in high school you work very hard, but we increased the number of kids in our cross-country team from like 35 to 50 my senior year because we opened it up to other people. And I still remember one of the kids who came out his senior year, his dad said, "I will buy you a letter jacket if you make the team." Okay. And he was not a very good runner.
Right.
But that's okay. He never missed a practice. And you know how you letter in cross country?
Yep.
You're either good or you show up.
Right.
And he didn't miss a practice. And if you don't miss a practice, you letter.
Right.
So he lettered, and his dad was trying to say that he didn't make the team. And that hurt me because those are the kind of things I remember camaraderie. I don't remember any single great race. I remember getting elbowed during Swain, this huge, cross-country meet, and having blood pouring down my face, and people cheering until I got close, and then it's like that look of horror.
Right.
Those are the kind of things I remember because those drive me towards the memories of camaraderie, of why I got into it, and why I like to be around other. Well, I don't think anyone wanted to be around me with the bloody nose, but. But it's this idea that you create this story, this almost a tapestry of what your running looks like. And that's what I want to give to our community now, is their ability to tell their own stories or to take a bad run and turn it into, hey, remember that time we went out with the herd and it was 5 below. I had never run in below zero weather. And you start to be able to tell that story to somebody else, and it helps motivate you to do well. Then I went off to college, didn't run, but I still wanted to be better and better. And the track workouts where you're doing 2400s and you're leaving every 2 minutes, and so I got pretty good. And then I made the decision at 25. It was either still be good or go to grad school. Yep. And I chose grad school because I wanted to keep my hobby a hobby, and I couldn't see longevity in making any money in being good. Right. And so that was a big turning point for me, and I think that's a lesson that I've really tried to help other really good runners have is don't bank on everything that's physical unless you're at that top level.
Yep.
Because it goes away, or it's never going to be enough.
Well, especially in distance running. I mean, the minimum salary for something like the NFL or the NBA, they're professional athletes, and they're the best at what they do for sure, and they deserve that money because it's marketed that way, and the way the money flows is just different than distance running. You could literally be like the 20th best marathoner or best 5K runner in America, 20th in the whole country, and you're still probably going to be living in a house with other guys, working a part-time job, making, who knows? I mean, $40,000, maybe $20,000 a year in sponsorships. So,
or hanging out in the back room of a running store with a bunch of boxes.
Exactly, trying to scrape together some stuff. But very good. So your entry point was competition. Kind of kept that going, but then some personal, professional decisions kept you from just having that graph. If we're going to get really technical, having that trajectory.
Right, the positive.
Keep going.
I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep getting better, and
right.
I made peace with that very early.
Good.
At 25, you don't think, oh my God, I'm done being better.
Right.
But I started that process early enough so that when it did start to fall off, that I was okay with that.
So you started it mentally or physically?
Mostly mentally. I still tried to keep up workouts in grad school,
right.
but it just doesn't work.
Right. All stress is life stress is running stress. Stress is stress.
Right. And I started seeing my running as the escape.
Yep.
And, dealing with mental illness, I realized that I need to sleep better, eat better,
yep.
and I have to exercise. And running, hate to say this in a podcast, but I don't run with headphones because yep. I want to have my mind be free to just process whatever comes to mind.
Yep.
And that has been a savior for me as far as just being able to function as a, regular enough
right.
physicist.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the idea is that running has become much more important than just the running. It's a lot of the camaraderie. It's a lot of the head clearing. It's the being able to adapt and be flexible with my life.
Lisha, so if you started, 95% of your running career in 7th grade was competition, and it was fun to be on a team, but like that social and then competitive part, they kind of ebb and flow. And I find you can have high social interaction with a high competitive team
our
too.
Team, just like you said, like we hung out with the JV and varsity. We
right.
were all together except on our workout day, but beyond that, we were all one team. It wasn't the top 5 and
right.
And I can really relate to what you said about making that decision. For me, it was when I became a mom of kind of dipping out of running a little bit. And I struggled with that a long time. And same thing. I don't run with headphones most days, I'd say, just to have that clearing of my mind and listen to nature and for my mental stability.
And then we come across, we'll have different stories on the podcast as well, but I come across a lot of people that our stories are very different because their entry point wasn't competition. Their entry point might have been just wellness, and they came from a different sport, and they found out their team sport, they just can't do it when they're 30 or 40 anymore because there's not the structure in the school and the team and everything.
Yeah, were we talking about that last night? It says there's that many 40-year-old gymnasts doing
right.
it.
Right.
Yeah. You got your pommel horse in the yard, right? And your balance beam down there in the basement.
Right.
Those are those like ninja warriors in their 40s.
Right. Exactly. Running something you can take every age, now we're seeing every climate, you can take on vacation. You don't have to have, the structure and the equipment even to do it. I feel bad sometimes for the team sport people because they get attached to their sport just like I'm attached to running. But once they're done with that last college game, maybe in football, it's not going to be exactly the same. It's not going to be structured as much as they want. But anyway,
so last year in my running class, there are stories that get told, and I try to get kids to think of their own story and what are they going to say in 10 years about the journey they've taken to do this? And I had two athletes, varsity athletes at Eau Claire. One was a gymnast and one was a wrestler, both who were injured. And they were a couple, and it was beautiful because they were both injured. They weren't training that year. They both came out for the class, and I was
training for their sport. You're saying
no, they were training for the half marathon,
but they couldn't train for their sport. So now they're running. And it just every week it filled me with glee to see these people who had mentally made that transition from being a really great athlete in their specified sport to being okay with a different challenge that they weren't great at, but they could work at. And that's one of those things that we all know that our mental capacity to do better comes a lot from how we feel about it. And, that's part of the reason why I always try to go around and listen to those stories or try to poke in the right place so that people know, I'm doing the right thing. And I think that's what we, on the Thursday night runs, it's always, hey, how's it going? What's that? What are you building for? Why are you happy this week?
What do your shirts say world's okayest runner every year? Or that was just last year? Okay, I love that.
That was, I was actually just at a race down in Houston, and
it's perfect.
Exactly. They're coming, whoa, I want one of those shirts. I said, well, you got to take the class. And it was one of those shirts where usually we start with 6 designs and we narrow it down to 2. Nope. That one, clear winner right out of the gate. And even the best person can use that as a motivation of, I'm part of this.
Well, and there's always going to be a runner better than you.
Oh, I guarantee you. I mean, even if you asked professional athlete, John Doe, when things didn't go the best he could, he would still say, how did your race go? He was maybe 3 minutes off his PR. He didn't do as well as he could. He would have said it went okay. Like that term, okay, it went okay. Like that. And so you're embracing it, you're owning it. It is the culture of the class to essentially get out there, be with other people. What you described as far as like doing something different, I feel like I have never really cross-trained. And this is the first year where I've been like, all right, I'm going on Facebook Marketplace, used set of cheap cross-country skis. I got to get my heart rate up. I'm a little injured. Just let's do this. Let's just try to do something new. And we went skiing because we haven't had good snow. We went skiing over in the Twin Cities. And I had a moment like that where the running thing has always been like our thing that we're experiencing. We kind of know the in and outs. But like, we get dropped off or we're driving there and you see these like 13, 14-year-olds get dropped off with all their good equipment. Like they've got the ski bags and they're like, they know the deal.
I'm fumbling. My like poles are dropping.
I'm just like walking. I'm like walking with, with like my skis and my poles like falling all over. It was like fun and it was funny and it was fun. And I wasn't upset. I wasn't like, oh, I wish I could do this better. Or how fast are they? How fast am I? I was like really enjoying being the newbie.
Right. And I think that, I don't want to say parenthood, but parenthood is a lot of, you have to put yourself into that idea that this is new. And I think that as, being those coaches and those leaders in the running community, we, by understanding that this is something new, that somebody shows up for their first run, it's okay for them to do 1.5 miles. Turn around whenever you need to and come back and exactly. And that's one of those things where, they say you have to crawl before you walk, but we don't really want crawling in the races we do, but we want to see people grow within themselves. And that's the same thing as at this age, quote this age, for you to take on something new, it's a little tougher. And I like to see that in runners too, because, try something new, try a new distance. You've done 5Ks, maybe you can try a 5-miler.
Well, I've heard it's really good for the brain and just your overall development to essentially just be in the mode of trying new things. It doesn't mean you have to make it your new life hobby, and it doesn't mean you have to do it even in a year from now, but just trying new things. Like running for the experienced runner, it might feel like you're doing the same training or the same amount of mileage, but it's actually different on your brain and different on your muscle memory than when you first started. Because when you first started, it was new. and now it's not new. So it's literally different doing it when you're 10 years in as opposed to 2 years in.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love, say, going out to Lowe's Creek.
Right.
Because I have different seasons for my different types of running, and I have trail season.
Trails, right.
And it's because it's a very different type of running.
Right.
And it helps my overall fitness.
You can mix it up. You can do track
winter
workouts.
running is even very different than being able to hop out the door in just your shorts.
Well, mentally, the pace is out the window. Like, who cares how fast you're running on ice?
And what do you have for your stride length? 12 inches?
Right. It actually I was running with Matt Carter, and he was saying he kind of enjoys winter because he's like, I usually overstride. My stride is too long, and I want to shorten it up. And every spring, I come out of winter better because I'm used to like faster, shorter, smaller strides because I'm being more careful on the snow and stuff. So just the seasons, and in Wisconsin we get all 4 seasons for sure. So Matt, I want to talk about this shift. You said grad school for you personally was a shift just with how much time you could maybe put into it, but also you're preparing yourself. But I also see, like, this is one of the reasons I wanted Matt to be our first guest, is because he's usually behind the scenes. He's doing all this organization, Eau Claire Marathon. He's championing other people. He's always like lifting other stories up. He's in the background. He's never really the guy in front of the camera or sharing about himself. And so that's one of the cool things that you see whenever you have a community like this. There's these few people that really kind of push the whole herd forward. And Matt is no exception to that by far. So when did you feel like just your fitness, your running world was shifting from kind of having it be about you and your training to about other people? And what's that been like? How has it been the same, different? How has it been more rewarding? How has it been more frustrating? What's that shift been like in the last 40 plus years, as you said?
Right. So 40 plus years. It's strange because you asked that question. I hadn't thought about this in a long time, but at the age of 18 or 19, I wanted to train for triathlons. And so a friend of mine, Rod Raymond, and I developed this idea. We're going to put on a triathlon camp. And we charged people, I think, $15 for 8 weeks. 8 weeks, $15. Okay, you work it out. We were not making money. But the whole reason was we wanted keys to the pool.
Right.
But what happened was I'm very young, but now I am, quote, in charge of a 15-year-old who, Dusty O, as we call him now. It's Dusty Olson, who turned into the pacer for Scott Jurek.
Yes.
Amazing, junior Olympian type of skier. And so I'm helping him, and I think to the 50-year-old guys that we had, Roger Hartley and Gene Lay, who came out, and I'm helping them just enjoy doing something that they thought they couldn't enjoy anymore. And I was getting something out of that.
Yep.
What's nice about that is that stays with me, that idea that I can still be great in where I was at that time, and I can help other people. And so when I got to the point of, do I want to stay, really dedicated towards me, or do I, go to grad school, kind of let this slide a little? It wasn't hard because I could always help people. I could always be there to, train with other people, help them develop workouts, that kind of stuff, teach people swimming. So that was always with me. And so I don't see any frustration. I think, as you get older, the frustrations are always injuries and things like that. But I enjoy where I am.
Good.
In fact, I'm really proud of my brother, which, I've had a healthy competition with him.
Right.
I still hold the record for the best 2 mile in high school.
There you go.
That's
nice because high school years end and you can never go back.
Exactly. It's like in the family, I have the slowest, fastest marathon and the fastest first marathon. So I'm on both sides of that.
Right.
And we all have our own little bests and things like that. But my brother sort of taught me something this past year, which is you can always make your own new goals. Yep. And that's really important because you will never beat your younger self.
Right.
He broke 2:30 in the marathon, and he was a Masters third place international, champion. This amazing. And he basically is figuring out how to compete against himself where he is at that point.
Right.
So he does age-graded results and things like that, but it keeps him motivated.
Right.
So his next challenge is to break the course record at the William Irving 5K the night before Grumman's Marathon, and then still try to win his age group.
There you go. So you can still have the competitive edge even when you're 40, 50, 60.
He's 55,
Absolutely.
56. So yeah, it's one of those things where you can have that competitive drive, and that's great.
Right.
But what I like about what he's doing is he's keeping it within reason,
right,
and he's doing it for himself, not. This you have to have the inner drive because
right.
I'm sorry, other than my mom, no one cares how I do.
Yeah.
And
right.
she doesn't understand even really what I'm doing. And so I got away from the, I don't want to say self-centeredness, but that I had to be that point of attention.
Right.
And I share my goals with other people because that might help them.
Yes.
Or I want to hear other people's goals because now you're living that community aspect of, hey, did you get your goal? Or
right.
Something that's much more conversational rather than how are we going to rank each other against
right.
each other?
And having a goal and taking steps towards that is so much more of the story than the actual number of the goal. I mean, you think about breaking 3 hours in the marathon, 2:30, or running a 5-minute mile. Like, these are literally just arbitrary numbers.
Yeah.
Like, so someone can get really bent out of shape about running 2:35 as opposed to 2:30, but like that's kind of just their perception of their own goal that they put on themselves because it's a round number.
Yeah.
It's just
I think
so arbitrary.
There was a streak back in, I don't know, 80s, 90s, it's all a blur, where I did 3 consecutive 263s in the marathon.
Right. And that's the shape you were in.
Yeah, because I couldn't break 3 hours.
Right.
So it's a 263.
Yeah, that's right. Dude, I was like, what kind of time is that?
Right, exactly. And so it's that idea that, we didn't hit that round number.
Right.
But it was our way of kind of laughing about it because you're right, it's just a number.
Yeah.
And it's a goal, you put it out there, but if you don't get it,
right.
It's one of those things where in my class, and I tell this to other people too, is there's always like 3 steps to a plan. It's the I want, I will, I dream.
Yep.
And when I ask my students, what do you want out of your race? If any of them writes down a time, I tell them, cross it out.
Good.
Because you cannot control
right the weather.
The weather.
Your
you
build
can't.
Up. Right.
Sometimes you can't even control your body. How many times have you been? Oh, maybe not you. You're really good.
I don't know. Hey, try me.
Okay, so how many times have you ever been running in a race and you're running really hard and you look down and you're walking? Your brain says that you're running, but you're walking. It's just like,
well, in the
how did that happen?
In the ultra, the trail world, it takes a lot of getting used to coming from the roads and then walking and having that be literally the best thing you can possibly do for your body in that moment.
Right, and that's where
it's normal.
That's a lot of the I wants or I wills are, I will have a positive attitude. I will allow myself to be flexible. Within my training, I will allow room within my training to, have an off day. And that's coming to acceptance. And then the wants are, maybe sometimes, maybe I want to, hold hands across the finish line with, my awesome instructor.
Right. Yeah. And that gets into A goal, B goal, C goal. You kind of have this tier.
And then that dream is, what are our dreams?
Right.
And this is in the running world. What's my dream? I have a dream in mind, and it's scary to me because 15 more years of marathoning that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But I kind of hope I do that.
Cool. We'll talk about that on some other podcast, maybe 15 years down the road. All right. So let's wrap up with we're not calling it the fartlek session because Ultra Runner Podcast has a great podcast and we're not going to steal from them. So we're going to end every episode with our interviews with our interval workout, which means we're going to go fast and we're going to go rapid fire on some last 5 questions. Okay. And they might not even be running related. But this first one is, number 1, what is your favorite food before a race?
Ooh, pizza.
Oh, pizza. Very good.
But not the day of.
I think you actually answered this. Your oldest or first shoes that you remember?
Brooks.
The Brooks with the cardboard.
The cardboard yellow and blue Brooks.
Lish, what's your next one?
How about your next vacation?
my next vacation will be to Duluth because that's where my partner lives.
Oh.
And they have wonderful running trails.
That's
and
correct.
that is the place. Sorry, this is supposed to be fast-paced. That's the place that taught me to enjoy running.
Yep.
They had a club up there that that had older people than me that brought me in, and they showed me the joy of running as fast as you possibly can.
Yep.
And then just hanging out and be happy.
Yep. And if you didn't catch before, everybody, Matt was talking about mentoring Scott Jurek's pacer. If you've read Born to Run, what's his name again? First name? Dusty O's.
Dusty
right?
Olson, yeah.
Dusty Olson. So that's a huge name in the ultra running world. We just had someone else in the store that looked over at my Steve Prefontaine poster and said, "Oh, Steve, yeah, I remember back when," and she's like a friend of Steve Prefontaine's. We get into the whole thing about how the movies are accurate in this way, not accurate. I mean, she's just like, it's unbelievable. You wouldn't think of it. Eau Claire, Wisconsin, in the back of a musty
Duluth.
stock room.
Okay, so
Duluth.
Moving on to next question, which
Thank
maybe you already answered it. Favorite race?
Love-hate relationship with the Grandma's Marathon.
Yeah,
And how many have you done?
A lot.
A lot.
More than you've been born.
I know. I think you gave me the number.
35.
So same amount.
Alicia's about to
I'm
turn
about
36.
to turn 36.
And then I'll have to run another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So that's a good way to remember it, actually. Very good. Well, I think that'd be it. Is there anything else you want to say?
I love the fact that we can be a community that brings everyone in and allows people to be where they are.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that has it's been a great part of the city.
Yep.
I think that's one of the things, bringing in a shop like this. I call it my personal clubhouse.
Yes. Keep using that. I like that.
Right. So, hang out at the clubhouse, come in and just stop in and say hi.
Yep.
And that's, there's no bad questions when you come into a place welcoming that wants to help you be better.
Yeah.
Faster, slow, let's go. Our
Faster,
motto,
slow, let's go.
I always tell people when they walk in and they're like, well, I'm just a runner that does this. And it's just like, no, you're a runner. If
That's
you ran
what we
across
hear
the street, you're a runner.
more than anything is I'm not a runner, but, and then they're like, well, I have a half marathon this month, and then I'm going to.
But I don't want to downplay that either, because I understand it is hard even to get into the door here.
Right.
And so
and
we want to be as open as we can.
That mental barrier of calling yourself a runner. If you run a mile, you're a runner.
And I love how our employee Chris says it. They say, "Oh, are you a runner?" And he goes, "Well, I'm a person that runs." Because we'll get into this. This is a reoccurring theme: is what do we put our identity in, right? And we're going to wrap up the show. We can't get into all that. But who are we at our core? Because when the running goes away, are we gone away? When the car accident happens and you literally cannot run, if you're only a runner, then are you no longer? So what our identity is in, it can be slippery slope, because running and good things are really easy to think of yourselves as that. But I like how Chris says it. He's a person that enjoys running.
So, ready for the last time we say the motto?
Oh, the last time? Dr.
Ready?
Moo? Oh, wait.
Ready?
Faster, slow, let's go. There it is. We'll see you next.
Fast.
Let's go! Faster, slow! Let's go! Faster, slow! Let's
All right, Matt, just say your name and check 1, 2, 3.
Steve Prefontaine. Check 1, 2, 3.
Wow, we have Steve Prefontaine here today.
All right.
He's old and overweight.